She cheated on me, and this is how I found out. I found a receipt for a hotel room stuffed inside my own best-selling novel. Not the first draft. Not a copy. My copy, the one I kept by the bed like a dog-eared security blanket. The title page was still signed. To Emma. You made this real. The receipt was folded neatly behind the acknowledgement section, like a sick little bookmark. It was from a place called The Palms in Santa Barbara. I'd never been to Santa Barbara. But let me back up, because this mess didn't start with betrayal. It started with insecurity and laziness and, okay, maybe a little bit of ego. I'm Clyde, 35, balding, allergic to cats and confrontation. I've wanted to be a writer since the 3rd grade, when I plagiarized a choose-your-own-adventure story and passed it off as my own. Ms. Latham gave me a gold star. I've been chasing that high ever since. The problem? Writing is hard, and love is distracting. Emma was beautiful, not just on the outside. She had that annoying type of confidence that made everything she said sound like a TED Talk. She believed in my potential, which is a very flattering word that actually means not there yet. She said things like, "You're not blocked, Clyde. You're pregnant with a novel." And I ate that crap up. So naturally, when she suggested I write a romantic novel based on us, our relationship, I nodded and said yes like the gutless romantic I am. But then came the page, and then the cursor, and then the panic. That's when I hired a ghostwriter. His name was Tom. Tom with no last name. Just Tom. His email signature said, "Professional ghost. Affordable, discreet, emotionally available." I should have taken that last part more seriously. We met on at a Starbucks that smelled like damp wood and almond milk. He was tall, with a look that screamed divorced but thriving. Wore a scarf even though it was 75 degrees out. He said he could channel deep vulnerability and had once written a memoir for a woman who trained parrots to detect lies in criminal trials. I didn't ask follow-up questions. He charged $600 a week. I Venmo'd him on the spot. We started with interviews. I poured my soul out. I told him about the time Emma and I got stuck in a broken-down gondola in Tahoe, and she calmed me down by pretending we were astronauts. I told him about the time she learned to bake gluten-free cookies just because I once mentioned I missed them. I told him everything, because that was the point, right? The truth, repackaged in fiction. Tom listened. He wrote. And then he started asking questions like, "Do you think she really loves you? Or just the version of you that thinks he's going to be a novelist?" At first, I thought he was being thorough, a method writer, one of those people who inhabits a story like it's a rented Airbnb. He said he needed to spend time with Emma to get her voice. That made sense. Sort of. I mean, the novel was supposed to be based on her. So I said yes. They started meeting once a week at the same Starbucks. Then twice. Then it was brunch. She said it was for authenticity. I told myself the same thing. I started to feel weird about it when Emma laughed at one of his jokes and repeated it to me later like she'd never heard it before. I brushed it off. Writers are paranoid. Comes with the territory. The manuscript came in slowly, chapter by chapter. It was good. Too good. The kind of good that made you jealous of yourself, which is a hard emotion to describe unless you felt it. Tom captured us perfectly. Or, rather, he captured her perfectly. She was radiant on the page. Too radiant. One day, I asked him if the story felt a little skewed. Like the boyfriend character was a bit of a joke. He blinked at me, then said, "Well, sometimes truth hurts, Clyde." I laughed. I assumed he was joking. I assumed a lot back then. The novel was published under my name, Windswept Affections. It debuted at number 6 on the New York Times bestseller list. Everyone thought I was a genius. Emma cried when she saw the hardcover. She said it was the most honest thing anyone had ever written about her. I should have known then. I think the first time I realized something was off was when Emma stopped mispronouncing charcuterie. It sounds stupid. I know. But for 3 years, she always said it wrong, charcuterie, with this little laugh after, like it was our inside joke. And then one night at dinner, with a group of people she barely knew, she just said it. Perfectly. like she'd never stumbled over it in her life. That's the moment. Right there. Not the email. Not the missing suitcase. Not the ghostwriter. Just that soft, smug charcuterie, and the way she didn't even glance at me when she said it. It's funny. When people talk about betrayal, they picture a moment, some loud, crashing scene. I wish it had been like that. I wish I'd caught them in the act, or found a text, or something clean and cinematic. But real betrayal is slower. It's a series of small rewrites, little edits to the version of reality you thought was final. I guess this is mine. This story isn't about revenge. It's not about forgiveness, either. It's about stupidity, about blind spots, about letting someone ghostwrite your life while you sit back and call it love. It's about what happens when you confuse being seen with being understood, and how sometimes the most humiliating thing isn't being lied to. It's realizing you gave someone the pen and told them to make you look good. So yeah, she cheated on me, and I paid the guy who made her fall in love. Before it all went sideways, we were one of those couples people took pictures of at coffee shops, half because Emma was beautiful, and half because I looked like a man who'd won something he wasn't supposed to. I met her at a used bookstore, because of course I did. She was standing in the fiction aisle, holding a copy of The Bell Jar with a look that said she'd already read it but wanted someone to ask her why. I didn't. Instead, I picked up the book next to her, Infinite Jest, which I hadn't read and never would, and said, "God, what a slog." She looked at me like I'd stepped on a puppy. Then she laughed. We had our first date that same night. Vietnamese food. I spilled broth on my shirt and tried to cover it with the menu. She made a joke about it being very human of me. I told her I was an aspiring writer. She said that was brave. No one had ever called it that before. Mostly people called it unemployed. Things moved fast. They always do when you're convinced you've met someone who gets you. Emma said things like, "You're not blocked, you're gestating," and I'd nod like that made any sense. She brought me herbal teas for focus and forced me to write at the kitchen table while she scrolled through Pinterest beside me, occasionally mumbling encouragement like a yoga instructor with an espresso addiction. We got a cat, a plant, a shared streaming account. I gave her the good side of the bed. She gave me space, exactly 90 minutes a day to create, during which I mostly Googled how to write without hating yourself. She believed in me. That was the whole selling point. We had rituals, Saturday morning farmers markets, Sunday couch marathons, late-night drives where we'd argue about whether the moon was following us or not. I wrote tiny notes and tucked them into her coat pockets. She baked muffins and told me I had a writer's sadness, which I decided was a compliment. I don't think it was fake. Not all of it. Some of it was real. You can't fake the way someone looks at you when you're talking about your childhood and you accidentally say something too honest. You can't fake how someone instinctively reaches for your hand when a sad song comes on. I told myself those things a lot. Because the truth is, we had a good beginning. And I clung to it. Even after the middle got murky. Even after Tom entered the picture. I told myself this was just a chapter. That maybe the story just needed tension. I didn't know she'd already found a better author. I didn't see it all at once. It started as a feeling, nothing you could put in a sentence. Like trying to describe the moment milk goes sour. At first, you think it's just you. That maybe you left the cap off. That maybe it's your own fault for expecting freshness. Emma was still Emma. Technically. Same voice. Same jokes. But things started slipping sideways. She stopped finishing my sentences. Stopped texting me song lyrics. And once, just once, I caught her looking at Tom the way she used to look at me when I came up with a good metaphor. The kind of look you earn. Still, I stayed blind. Proudly blind. I told myself it was paranoia. Writers imagine things. That's our curse and our charm. Then one night, I walked into the living room and saw them on the couch, laughing at something on her laptop. I couldn't hear the joke, but I could hear how she laughed. The sharp inhale. The second beat of breath. The way her head tipped toward him just slightly, like she was choosing gravity. I asked what they were watching. Tom said it was a clip of a goat that screams like a man. I smiled. I said, cool. I went back to my office and stared at my open notebook for 40 minutes. There was one sentence written on the page: they're always laughing before they leave you. I found the receipt 2 days later. Not because I was snooping. Not because I suspected anything that concrete. I was looking for an old airline ticket stub to prove I'd once flown to Nashville for a writing conference that ended up being a pyramid scheme about selling journaling candles. Instead, I found it, wedged into Windswept Affections, my debut novel. Or, more precisely, Tom's novel in my voice, my name, my delusion. It was a receipt for 2 nights at the Palms in Santa Barbara. Room 409. Charged to T. Morrow. At first, I didn't connect it. I just stared at it, like it was in a language I used to know. Then I remembered the inscription on the inside cover. To Emma, you made this real. That was the copy she used to read aloud from when people came over. She'd sit on the couch with a glass of red wine, reading my words, Tom's words, pretending she was living them. But she wasn't pretending. She was living them, just not with me. I flipped to chapter 13. That's the one where the main character, based on Emma, checks into a beachside hotel with her lover. There's a scene too poetic in hindsight, where she describes the sheets as so white they feel like denial. She said that line was her favorite. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I laughed. That's the part one still don't know how to explain. It was a laugh from somewhere deep and stupid. I laughed because it was too perfect. I laughed because I had thanked Tom for capturing us. I laughed because I had paid him to do it. And then I sat down and wrote the most honest sentence of my life. I wasn't the author. I was the plot device. The next morning, she was gone. Her closet was half empty. Her toothbrush missing. No goodbye. Just a Gmail notification. Don't be mad. We're in love. Please don't sue him. D. And that was it. No punctuation after him. Just open space. Like an unfinished story. Like she wanted me to write the rest. So here it is. The rest. She left me for the man who wrote her better than I did. A man who knew how to structure longing. Who made her dialogue sparkle. Who made her feel like she belonged in a story instead of just living in one. They live somewhere else now. I don't know where. It all started earlier than I thought. In hindsight, always too late, I started to see traces. Scattered, careless, like crumbs on a white shirt after dinner. Only I didn't want to erase them. I was afraid to find out where they came from. Like, I thought it was normal when she went on head-clearing walks and came back with eyes that reflected someone else's sky. She said she was just listening to podcasts. I believed her. I even asked what episode. She always answered too quickly titles that weren't in the search. I checked, of course. Once. Then I stopped. Or the nights when I went to bed earlier. She'd say she was working on a photo book, one she was going to make about us, like a visual love story. I'd find her in the dark at her laptop, wearing glasses she only wore for reading, always closing the screen when she heard my footsteps. I thought surprise. I was right. Just the wrong one. Real betrayal is silent. You don't hear it. It doesn't slam the door. It closes it slowly, with 2 fingers, and leaves the light on, so you wouldn't suspect. It turned out they met on Tuesdays, when I went to a literary group that I had forced myself into, so that I wouldn't interfere with Emma and Tom's work. I was even happy. I thought it was progress. I thought that maybe I was inspiring them. They really did laugh together, as if they were creating something great. They really did create, just not what I ordered. They met in our house, in my bed, under my painting of a ship sailing into the fog, a metaphor I once explained to Emma as saying goodbye to the past. Apparently, she remembered. She baked him the same cake she made for my birthdays, only with cinnamon. He, unlike me, liked cinnamon. She would turn on the playlist we'd put together, just deleting my favorites. He didn't like Radiohead. She didn't care either now. She wore my t-shirt. Not the one with "Write or Die" written on it, but a simple gray one. Her favorite. She said it was warm, like home. Now I know, home was not where I was. Sometimes she put her phone on silent mode and put it face down. I thought, so as not to disturb. It turned out, so that notifications from Tom would not pop up. I even held this phone in my hand once. I wanted to take a photo of the cat. He looked at me in a particularly pitiful way. I didn't understand why then. Another time she came back from yoga with a bruise on her thigh. I joked, "Did you fight with Zen?" She said she fell on a block. Now I understand that no one falls on a block. It's called when someone presses you too hard into the mattress of someone else's apartment. She lied with care. She lied with a smile that I was once proud of. She stroked my shoulder while she dreamed of his back. She asked how my day was, so she could have an alibi for her nights. Once she said, "I don't think you're in this book. You just think you are." At the time, I thought she was talking about the plot. Now I understand. It was a confession. I just didn't know I needed to hear it. The truth was there all along. It wasn't hiding in the dark. It was in the light, on the table, in the words, in the silence between chapters. I just didn't read them. And you know what the worst thing is? It's not that she left. It's not that she cheated. It's not that she lied. And the fact that all this time she was learning to say charcuterie correctly, not for me. No one starts with the thought, "I will cheat on the one who loves me." This is not the first scene. This is not even the middle. This is a crack that appears in the wall when you are still sure that the house is strong. At first, you just do not want to disturb neither yourself nor the other. Then you do not want to talk. Then you do not want to stop. Then, that's it. I thought that betrayal was about sex, about passion, about impulse. It turned out that most often it is about ego. Why do they do it? Because they want to be someone else. Love is a mirror, and when a person gets tired of his reflection, he looks for a new one. Not because you are bad, but because in you he sees too much about himself, and he does not like everything. Because they want to feel alive. Life is a routine, even if it is beautiful. Especially if it is beautiful. Sometimes a person begins to look for sharp corners simply because smooth walls no longer evoke emotions. Not because you do not give him happiness. Because he doesn't know how to be one. Because they can. This is the simplest, coldest answer. Some people just do what they can hide. And if the chance allows, they use it. Morality kicks in later, if it kicks in at all. Because you've become too safe. Safety is what you fight for. But in the eyes of those who don't know how to be an adult, it's boredom. You begin to be perceived as a base to which they can return after the flight. They don't understand that by destroying the base, they are destroying the flight itself. How can you tell if you're being lied to? Emotional shift. You speak as always, but they answer you a little differently. Not ruder, not harsher, just with a pause. Sometimes it's in this pause that the whole truth lives. A lie is rarely loud. It's warm, like a glass of water into which someone forgot to throw tea. Excessive care or coldness. When a person begins to lie, he becomes either overly attentive or detached. The first is his compensation. The second is his preparation for going out. Memorized explanations. You ask how the day went and get a report where everything is in its place. But you feel that this is not a story, but a rehearsal. Lies are rarely spontaneous. They are practiced in front of the mirror. Information that was not asked for. We were just talking, that's all, although you did not ask with whom. This is the brain trying to warn. Pay attention to what I did not tell you. Laughter that is no longer for you. You hear it from across the room, not from her, from him. And suddenly you realize, your laughter once sounded exactly like this. What does this say about you? You can be perfect, caring, reliable, and still, you can be betrayed, not because you are not enough, because you are not a mirror in which someone sees who they want to be. Sometimes you are too real for someone nearby to be scared. Cheating is not always about sex. It is an escape. It is an escape from the responsibility of being seen, to be close, to be sincere. It is easier to create a new role than to live in an old one honestly. I thought I was building love. They wrote the script. Only I was a secondary character in it, with the inscription "will not recognize" until the third act. And so it happened. Betrayal doesn't end in bed. It only begins there. The aftermath, it comes slowly, like letters with no return address. Sometimes years late. Sometimes right away, on the morning you wake up in the wrong place. That's how it all turned out for all of us. For Emma, she left with him. They left me a note. Well, not quite a note. She put the last page in my copy of the manuscript, the one I hadn't read. The one where she describes the scene where the heroine runs away with the writer and leaves the man with whom everything was too quiet. I thought it was an artistic turn. No, it was a route. She has a studio now. They post photos of sunsets and coffee with heart-shaped phone together. They look happy. You know what's ironic? She became an author. Her website says, co-writer of the best-selling novel that changed my life. Life really did change. Mine, it broke. Hers, it sweetened. I saw an interview with her once. She said she had found her truth. I turned off the video at the word truth. For Tom, he became famous. The book sold millions of copies. People admired the depth of his understanding of the pain of a man who was betrayed. He even gave a master class on the topic, how to write from the point of view of a deceived hero. He looked at the camera with an expression of grief that I knew. I invented it myself. They invited him to a talk show. There he spoke about the fragility of the male ego and toxic expectations in relationships. The female audience applauded standing up. He profited from the pain that he helped create. He did not lie, he simply wrote the truth that he stole. The worst thing, he is really talented. I reread the scenes he wrote about me. They were so accurate that I felt like I was looking at myself in a coffin and hearing my biography read out. For me, I was left in an empty house. Everything was in its place, except the meaning. The dishes were untouched. The mirrors reflected a person I no longer knew. I tried to finish writing my version of the story, but only bitterness dripped from the pen. My friends asked, "How could you not notice?" I didn't know how to answer. Because sometimes you're not blind. You just look the other way because you're afraid of the light. I went through stages. Denial, anger, depression. I was stuck on acceptance, like an old phone at 3%. It seemed to work, but you couldn't get through to anyone. I tried to write again, but now every hero I created looked like me, and every heroine looked like her. Even if I called her by a different name, even if I made her a pirate or an astronaut, in the end, she always left with someone who knew how to choose his words better. Sometimes I wonder, what if I hadn't hired him? If I had written it myself? Badly, clumsily, with grammatical errors and drawn-out metaphors. Would she have stayed? Maybe. Maybe she would have left later. Maybe she would have left more quietly. But she wouldn't have left me the hero of a book I didn't write. Conclusion? Betrayal doesn't kill you right away. It makes you the author of a tragedy you didn't order. And then it leaves you with a draft on which it says, correct, trust, rewrite life. If you're reading this and it clicks inside you, you've been there. Maybe not with a writer, not with a woman named Emma, but with a person you trusted who turned that trust into a ladder to walk down. If you've lived through that, you're more than you think. I no longer say things like, I would never, or that's not forgiven, because life is more complicated than we want it to be. Sometimes you stay, sometimes you leave, sometimes you stay, but inside you've already left. This is what I've learned, slowly, hard, not all at once. You're not stupid because you trusted. People like to say, how could you not understand? There were signs. Yes, there were. But when you love, you see through your feelings, not through suspicion. Trust is not weakness. It is the choice of an adult. And if someone abused your choice, it doesn't make you naive. It makes them liars. Betrayal isn't always about you. You can be perfect, faithful, caring, and you can still be betrayed. Sometimes the reason is inside the other person, in their insecurity, trauma, desire for freedom, for attention, for a fantasy that they themselves don't believe in. You became collateral damage, not because you were bad, but because he or she didn't know how to live honestly. This is not about your value. This is about their fear. You don't need to urgently let go. Advice like forget, find yourself another, don't think, bypass. You have the right to all stages of grief. To anger, to tears, to dull silence in the morning. You have the right not to understand what to do with it now. You have the right not to forgive, or not know what to do with this feeling. Emotional betrayal is an amputation without anesthesia. You learn to live with phantom pain, and it doesn't make you weak. It makes you alive. This is not the end of your story. Yes, it was a chapter. Yes, there was betrayal in it. But you are still the author. You are not the hero of a book that someone else wrote about your fall. You are a person who lived through it all, who now knows what a lie looks like, and knows what the truth looks like, and that it is not always beautiful, but always better than beautiful illusions. I am not writing this to say, you will become stronger. Sometimes pain does not make you stronger. It just makes you more honest. And you are already honest. You know what it is to be naive, to be faithful, to be deceived, to be alive. If you are going through this, I am with you. Silently, without advice, without slogans, just with respect for your pain. You are not alone, and you are not broken. You just don't lie to yourself anymore. Sometimes I feel like it was all a novel written by someone else. Too awkward, too precise, too painful. It's ironic that my most honest story was written by someone else's hand. I wanted to tell it myself, slowly, with pauses, with hesitation, with those very phrases that would seem awkward but real. I hired him because I was afraid to write about love. But in the end, he didn't just write it. He took it. Now I live in the part of the book that no one reads. After the denouement, after the ending, when the character is no longer needed, because the plot has already ended. Only I'm not a character. I'm a person. Sometimes I imagine Emma discovering this story. The real one. Mine. Not the one in the shop windows, but the one in these words. I imagine her reading and freezing for a second. Not from guilt. No, just from the recognition. He understood everything. Life goes on. No, I haven't become stronger. I've become deeper, like an old scar that no longer hurts, but aches in the rain. I'm writing again. Badly, sometimes absurdly, but alone, without ghosts. And if this story helps someone survive their betrayal, then it was not in vain. Love is a risk. Betrayal is its shadow. But the truth is the only thing that remains when everything else is gone. So here it is. All of it. Without embellishment. Without literary twists. Just me. A man who was betrayed. And who still found the words. For himself. And maybe for you.